Yeah. Relationship developed over the years. So I always get this wrong, and Kelly, you'll correct me, but I think it was about 10 years ago that we met now.
I think it's coming on 10. Time flies.
7 and 10. Okay, yes, it does fly. Back in those days, I was working for Premier Research Labs teaching QRA, and her and Dr. Connors were practicing together. And we got to meet then when she was learning muscle testing. And keep in mind, this is a double Ivy League grad medical doctor that wanted to learn muscle testing. And now she has a ND and a CCN, and she's FODMAT certified. She's been through A4M's cancer modules. So she's got a impressive resume, also a wonderful attitude and a humble spirit and a thirst for always what's next. So when I approached her about maybe formulating some products, I asked her what's missing, and she's like, Jason, the mast cell. We got to really look for a product for the mast cell. And I know that's all the rage these days, but this was probably what, 3.5 years ago that we started down that path.
Yep.
So, it's kind of sometimes it's a pain being ahead of the curve, but now, people are catching up, which is nice. So without further ado, Kelly, I'll just hand it over to you and talk about how basically you came up with this formulation based off all your hard research and how we felt it was such a missing piece in why a lot of our patients are struggling for multiple reasons.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Jeff, Jason, the whole team, US Enzymes, Master Supplements. I'm very honored to be here. I love what you're doing with education. You're always advancing. I'm just honored to work with people that are very, very true to their word. They're, always seeking for the highest knowledge and superior ingredients and education. And that's why I was putting this PowerPoint together, which is not moving. Hang on 1 second. There we go. I came across this quote, "Science without virtue is mischief." And the definition of virtue is standing true to your morals. And there's a lot of shady supplement companies out there, people. I mean, I think we're all in agreement with that. And there's a lot of bad misinformation. Our patients don't know, who's telling the truth and who's not. And when I got to know Jason himself personally and US Enzymes and their quality of supplements, the quality that they put into, we toured the factory about a year ago. And can I just ask everybody to mute a little bit of feedback? Technology, right?
Right.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So I toured the factory, just happy and elated to be able to formulate for this company. It's just one of my dream comes true. So when I did come to Jason and all the higher ups, and I said, here's what's going on. We have this mast cell, we have problems, and we're not recognizing it, and it's hidden in plain sight every single day in our offices. And if we could get a formulation together that would help this, it would be a home run. And lo and behold, we got ourselves a home run. And I'm excited to talk about the science. I'm excited to talk about how I arrived at this moment of, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it. And I thank God for the patients that walk in to our offices. We all do, because they teach us so much. And to give just a little background on my story is that, I was practicing medicine, doing a great job in family practice, and then I myself became sick. And the model of pill for every ill didn't work for me anymore, because I was the one sitting in the patient chair. And it was at that point that I had a real paradigm shift, that I needed more education. I needed to learn muscle testing, and I needed to get a naturopathic medical degree, and I needed to learn about nutrition and detoxification and things that I completely poo-pooed in my medical career, but that saved my life 100%. And so when I go in and talk about phase 2.5, this is something that I lived in my disease body. This is how I fought out of this grave. And I got out because I amended, and I'm maintaining my phase 2.5. I'm going to teach you how that intermingles with these mast cells, how we're talking about inflammation, the root cause of every disease. So my statement to cover my butt is, this is for educational purposes only. I'm not trying to diagnose or treat anything. We're all in this together, so I'm sharing the information that I have for an educational purpose. So about 2 years ago, I got a little famous for my 2.5, phase 2.5 work when Dr. Neil Nathan, renowned mast cell Lyme disease doctor out in California, he mentioned me in his book because of the work that I had been doing behind this phase 2.5. And as we'll see, phase 2.5 is how our body manufactures bile, how it secretes bile, and bile carries the toxins out of our body, and how if we're not doing that, if our phase 2.5 isn't working, if we're not making that bile and escorting it out where it goes into the intestines and then into the toilet, if we're not doing that, we are a toxic soup and we're going to get sicker and sicker. So this is kind of where it all started. I like to put this in there in case you've read this book. I mentioned, but this book is in of itself an amazing manuscript about mast cell as well. So if you want to dig deep, nerd out, get that book. So when I start to talk about detox, I like to put a magical spell over everyone and pretend that we all know nothing about detox, because the word is so bastardized. We see it on TV, we see it on the supplements when we used to be able to go shopping, you know, detox, detox juice, detox underwear, you know, it's just like, oh, just, okay, let's just erase and let's focus on the biochemistry. Let's focus on just strictly what's going on, because we know about this much of how our wonderfully and beautifully made body works. And what we do know, let's just focus on the mechanisms, because then it'll all go together instead of hearing that word and like kind of getting a little sick feeling. So in 2008, which was after I graduated from medical school, phase 0 of detoxification was actually was coined. And we really know a lot about these phases of detoxification because of the pharmaceutical industry likes to study how drugs move throughout the hepatocytes throughout the body. So what we know right here is that this is an hepatocyte. And then in the middle right here, the BC is the bile caniculus. So basically you're looking at the movement in, right here down here is the sinusoid, so that's your blood. So your toxins are moving through your blood. When I say toxins, that's just a really simplified term for exogenous, endogenous things that need to leave your body. Your body's decided that I can't live without methyl mercury, it's gotta go. So it's gonna go through the sinusoid membrane right here. So that's import into the liver or kidney. And for simplicity's sake, we're just going to settle with, we're gonna focus on the workhorse of detoxification, and that's the liver. So the toxin moves through phase 0, and this is not willy-nilly. There are transporters that are involved in every one of these movements. There are things that block phase 0. So if you want to know more about that, I've done more podcasts that really expound on that. I've done seminars on it. So the gist is that toxins need to move into the hepatocyte. They usually go through phase 1, which are transformation enzymes, so oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, and that's typically done by our big family of P54 enzymes, the cytochrome P450s, that work on those toxins to make them a little bit more reactive, because the end goal is to get those toxins to become water soluble, because bile is aqueous. Bile is an aqueous solution. So we're going to put them through phase 1 detox, and they're going to change a little bit. Then they're going to go to this phase 2, the conjugating enzymes. So glucuronidation, glutathione, amino acid conjugation, sulfation. Those are the things that make that particular toxin water soluble, and it's all very specific on how we are actually get rid of certain toxins. Like you get rid of plastics a different way than you get rid of old thyroid hormone or old cholesterol or mercury. So that's another stuff that's very well designed. And then finally, when you have those toxins and they're water soluble, they're wrapped up in their pretty bow, they need to move into the bile caniculus. And when they move into the bile caniculus, that needs to be coupled with manufacturing of bile salts. That has to be concurrent with the movement of those toxins. You also have to have phosphatidylcholine on board in order to make the flow of the bile not sludgy, right? So then phase 3 is when those final conjugated toxins move from the bile into excretion. So basically we kiss them goodbye in the toilet and we're less toxic. So what phase 2.5 is actually the movement of the water soluble toxin, because there's a transporter. See on that squiggly line right there, that says BC, there lies a transporter there. It's called the MRP2 transport protein. It lies there so that the toxin can go through that transport protein. And the other piece of, so it's a 3-step process, phase 2.5. So you're having that movement of the toxin. You're also having a bile salt move through the B step. So you have to be able to make that bile salt. You have to be able to make bile in order for it to get into the canaliculus. So you're going to be moving together. They're an ATP driven mechanism. So they have to move concurrently. And then finally through the MDR, you're having phosphatidylcholine move through that. So that's a 3-step process of getting those toxins out of your body that have to be in sync and they have to be resourced. I'll just tell you is that when I was looking at patients who had SIBO, and I kept thinking, why are these patients, it's like the revolving door of SIBO. We all know this. We treat the SIBO comes back. And I just couldn't figure out. And I thought, you know, I was really into everybody's getting genetics in my house. Everybody's getting their raw data. And I thought, let me just go see if there's any similarities. And lo and behold, I found the similarity that these people had a PEMT SNP and were most likely expressing. PEMT creates phosphatidylcholine. So if you're not creating your phosphatidylcholine, your bile is going to be sludgy and stuck. Okay. The second thing I noticed is that the ACAT enzyme and the PANK enzyme, there were some SNPs in those. Those are responsible for making the acetyl and the CoA. Acetyl-CoA is the building block for bile salts, among a million other things. So if you're not making your acetyl-CoA, if you have those SNPs that are expressing, and again, we don't treat genetics, but they sure are helpful when you're trying to figure out stuff, is that you may have some problems moving the toxins because this all has to be together, and you have some problems moving those into the biocanaliculus. So I teamed up with another company to create a support product. So this support product has in it artichoke leaf that has been studied for years and years. I got this little tip off from the Amish because they use a ton of artichoke to help support the hepatocytes, support the gallbladder. So there's artichoke in this. There's also the conjugating factors, glycine and taurine. There's also phosphatidylcholine in this product. And then finally, there's bitter herbs. Okay, so then this all supports that movement of the phase 2.5 to all have it moving in concert. But the big limiting step, this is the $1 million question, what really eliminates, and I love this door here, right? Because it is like a door. It's like we have our toxin, it needs to get out. And even if we took that phase 2.5 product from Professional Health Products, we took that and we had all the phosphatidylcholine, perfect, you know, status. We had our liver was well resourced. We had the conjugating factors. We were helping support making the bile salts. There's still going to be a giant rock in the way of that. And that comes down to if you're inflamed. How many people walk in our door asking for our help who are inflamed, who have inflammation as part of their clinical picture? I would just venture to guess that all of them have inflammation, right? So let's just back up again. If we're inflamed, our body's natural ability to get rid of toxins is gone. The actual membrane that I talked about, that transport protein, is actually plucked from the membrane when we're inflamed, and it is actually put back into the other membrane. I'm going to back up because this is so fun to look at this. Okay, so we had that transport protein right here on this squiggly membrane, right? And that's where our toxins go right into that biocanaliculus. Well, guess what? The MRP2 moves down here, translocates, so that your toxins go back into your blood when you're inflamed. So detoxification is more the antithesis of inflammation. So they do not go very well together. So you could take this product till you're blue in the face, but if you're not addressing the #1 issue, you're not going to get anywhere. And I was inflamed. I was diagnosed with MS. I was a toxic stew of just inflammation. And when well-meaning practitioners would give me glutathione because it was really important, well, guess what would happen? I take the glutathione, I feel better for a minute, and then after that, I had produced more toxins with no exit strategy. So I feel worse. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. This doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it sure makes sense to me now. We have to literally work on inflammation before we can do anything. Phase 2.5 in my book, and I'm going to convince you in your book, comes first, and that means knocking down inflammation. So when I was working with Dr. Bob Miller, we were doing conferences on genetics, and he was interested in the mast cell. And the mast cell, to me, back in medical school, we had about, you know, one lecture, maybe a couple slides on it, where it was like, this is the mast cell. You think of, you know, itchy, sinusy stuff, histamine, and that's about it. Okay. But what blew my mind when I started going into the literature in about 2017 is that the mast cell is the ringleader of inflammation. And when I Googled it, I found this picture. It's just so beautiful, electron microscopy here. So this is an endothelial cell right here. That's just an erythrocyte. The endothelial cell, and this is a P for podocyte, just a normal cell. But look what this giant cell right here, it's just hovering right over the endothelial cell, monitoring what is in the blood. And all those vacuoles in there, those vesicles, they contain over 500 different mediators. Now look over here into the left side of your slide, and you'll see the mediators. Of course, one is histamine, there's serotonin, heparin, and things. Your body has these mast cells that are ready to degranulate when they get a warning sign. Now the warning can be heavy metals, and we'll talk about this. It could be EMF, it can be mold, it can be Lyme, and it'll set these mast cells off, and they'll degranulate. And look what happens when they degranulate. The physiological effects: inflammation. Look at these cytokines that they go spitting out into our milieu. TNF alpha, IL-6, IL-1, IL-1 beta, all cytokines that really wreak havoc. They cause a lot of inflammation. Now, the body does not make mistakes, people, right? It does not make mistakes. There's a physiological reason why your body is doing this. But what happens is that these mast cells, they get a little too reactive. They need to calm down. And yet that mast cell overactivation, that's what I was talking to Jason about. I'm like, I see it all the time. Now I can name it. I know what's going on. I know that they're being triggered. Now, what are they being triggered by? Again, it can be viruses. It can be the triggering of themselves, the inflammation. It's like a positive feedback loop. It could be a bad gut. It can be a lot of different things. It can be, again, an EMF. You know, there's some literature that the EMF, the vibratory mechanism, may cause these to degranulate. And when I started to try and explain this to my colleagues, to my patients, they kind of looked at me like, well, I thought mast cell, I thought that was just a histamine thing. And, histamine, I don't have a stuffy nose. I don't have a runny nose. I'm not sneezing or anything. And then so I laminated this picture right here about the mast cell. And I showed them that, your endometriosis or your dysmenorrhea, your vertigo, the migraine, so on and so forth, they could all be caused by this overactivation of mast cells. So let's think wider net. Let's not think myopically. Let's think that there could be a possibility that something is triggering these mast cells, and we are going to darn well work on their triggers. So I'm going to talk about that too. How, if you know your patient has Epstein-Barr, well, let's go after it, right? Let's just manage what we can as we find root causes. But again, this is about just quelling the inflammation of these overactive mast cells. And then I did more research, and Dr. Theodoridis, he's one of the most published authors on the planet. He's been called the master of the mast cell. He had a great quote, and I just want to read it because it's so good and it's so pertinent to what we're talking about. So mast cells are known for their involvement in allergic reactions, but we were the first to show his group that they are also necessary to initiate inflammation, thus participating in inflammatory diseases that worsen by stress, such as autism, cancer, chronic fatigue, interstitial cystitis, migraine, headaches, psoriasis, and MS. The only plausible way to explain how mast cells can participate in so many diverse processes is their ability to secrete distinct chemicals, that's those mediators, relative for different pathological settings. So we went through then how that graphic, how the histamine can just go anywhere it wants. It's not just one place. The mast cell itself does not move, but the mediators can go anywhere. So how do we know if the person we're taking care of is inflamed, if our patient or our client's inflamed? Well, I stole this slide with permission. from Dr. Eric Balcavage. Brilliant, Dr. Eric. I love these labs. I love how I never really even thought of RDW, for example, as a marker of inflammation. So I have these published on my website, just as clues to how your body can be in a state of inflammation, and maybe your CRP is fine, but look at the other labs. Take a look at these other ones. Are there other things that are pointing you into a direction of, yes, this person does need some management for inflammation? And then the question comes up, well, what are the signs and symptoms of inflammation? Well, inflammation is at the root cause of most disease. Thank you, Dr. Axe. I totally agree with you. That when someone's walking in and they have high blood pressure, they have migraines, they have headaches, they have eczema, it's probably inflammation. There's a piece that we need to uncover as practitioners and recognize that we have to go digging for that, right? Because that is so inherent to what we're looking at, is the inflammation piece. And it just depends on the person's constitution, their weak link, their Achilles heel, what's the phenotype gonna look like? What's it gonna look like when this person's inflamed? Some people get brain fog, some people have high cholesterol. So it's all different. So that I don't put a list on there, because I just don't think as clinicians we need a list. We just need to really hone in on what we are good at. And what we are good at is working on foundations. We have got to put the fire out. This is a really good graphic of what goes on when you are in a state of inflammation. Does this house need new window trim? Does this house need new carpet? So that's my analogy for, does this need another supplement? Does this need another medication? No, it needs the fire put out, right? So we work on our foundations as clinicians, and we keep working on them. I work on mine every single day, because if I don't work on my foundations, I don't feel well. And I start to ignite those little fires that are in my house that may be pretty put out, but I don't want to pour gasoline on them. We also want to identify the triggers as clinicians. So what triggered that fire to start? Was it stress? Was it a virus? Was it a nutrient deficiency? What is going on? And then thirdly, let's calm the inflammation. This is where we come in and we can go, we are not band-aiding this, okay? Because I do not like band-aiding things, but what we're doing is we're giving our patient, giving them something that can actually get them a leg up, have them feel better while we're doing our doctor jobs, while we're working on foundations, while we're identifying the triggers. Here's your product, here's your SunBalance. It's gonna help calm those mast cells. You're gonna feel a little bit better. You're gonna feel better, and then we're gonna do things that just naturally calm them as well. So what are foundations? In my book, nothing trumps nutrition, hydration, rest, and peace. Nothing. So we're going to go over them and over and over them. They may mean different things for different clinicians, but for me, nutrition means anti-inflammatory diet, whole foods, non-processed. You can argue till the cows come home with the carnivores and the vegans and the whatever. I just like to have a diet that's rubber to the road, that's put to their body, that they're feeling well, their markers of inflammation are going down, and it's not processed, right? If you have to do gut restoration, do the gut restoration. Keep going with the probiotics, keep going with the prebiotics, your sun fiber, keep your gut healthy. Hydration, drink good water. So bile is 95% aqueous. If we're dehydrated, our inherent detoxification system is shot. It's not going to work. Like, just keep hampering on that. And in order to have good hydration status, you have to have good cell membranes. We could have an entire seminar on good cell membranes. But I would say that it's important. I'm starting to use, from the recommendation from Sean Bean, I'm starting to use Omega Quant to get an idea of the cell membrane health. I like to use phase angle as well. I like to make sure I'm giving them a lot of phospholipids. So hydration is really important for that. Rest. I mean, sleep is an epidemic that we're not getting enough of. So that's something we all have to work on. I love the book, Why We Sleep, by researcher Matthew Walker. He really goes through the stages of sleep. It's something that when Dr. Eric and I wrote our book, which I'll talk about a little bit, we honed in on a whole chapter on sleep fitness, what we call it. So we encourage people to track it. I have an Aura ring that I wear because I track my sleep, because I want to know what interventions I'm doing are helping me sleep better, because I feel like that's an overall game changer and a win for health. You can help with use supplements. Again, we'll talk about SunBalance, how decreasing the inflammation can really help you get more deep restful sleep, especially when we're using eloquent nutrients that are quelling neuroinflammation as well, really quelling that down, having that lymphatic release in the middle of the night. That's what I've noticed too. I get more deep sleep when I'm using the SunBalance. And then peace. So need I say more? So we have another chapter in our book called Emotional Fitness. So working on that, especially just don't take it for granted, right? We're all on this call. We're probably really good at recognizing that it's a very big piece of health in general. But when I was practicing in that white coat, I could give a crap about emotional health. You know, it was all the labs, the markers and things, but now I take it so seriously because it is really important that we stay emotionally healthy. So I mentioned those fitness factors, and this is Eric, Dr. Eric and I, this is our labor of love. It's called the thyroid debacle. It would be amazing if you pre-order it. It's coming out in July. In it, we have 3 parts. Part 1 is where I go into my medical training. We talk about the old model of thyroid physiology, of thyroid care. You have low thyroid function, hypothyroidism diagnosis. Here's your synthroid. We talk about that model. We talk about the basics. So this is for your patient as well. Then we talk about part 2. Eric goes into the science that he has hard-fought knowledge. He has spent hours and hours going through this, and it makes sense, and it's brilliant, and it will change your patient's life. If you have thyroid disease, like I have thyroid disease, I have Hashimoto's, his work has personally changed my life. So I'm indebted to him. This book is amazing. Part 3 talks about all the fitness factors that you can manage. There's 10 of them. Dietary fitness, sleep fitness, emotional fitness, physical fitness, and respiratory fitness, genetic fitness, all of those. So that's a manual for your patient to address what's going on, because it's never usually one thing that's causing inflammation, is it? It's never. Usually it's a little in a lot of categories, or it can be, if you look at the triggers over there on the left, it could be in a category of there's a trigger physically that's bringing you down. Chemically, you're full of toxins, maybe microbial, maybe you have Lyme or you have mold or something that's interfering with your health. Or again, emotional stress. When Dr. Robert Navio talks about the cell danger response, our body does not know the difference between a physical assault and an emotional assault to set off our own body's defense mechanism. So again, this book, I hope that you order it because it'd be supporting us, US Enzymes. We mentioned all the wonderful things that US Enzymes and Master Supplements have helped us with along the way. So let's get to the good stuff. So SunBalance. So this is my baby. This is something I came to Jason with about 3 years ago, and I said, Jason, we got to put something together with these nutrients because they are showstoppers, especially when they're put together, especially when I realized that I dug myself out of the grave, getting rid of my quelling my inflammation, right?